John Benton, and I was an aviation electronic technician first class. And I grew up in Marietta, Georgia. And my mother and grandmother both worked for Lockheed, Georgia. My grandmother started in the late 40s when they were starting to build. I think they were building the B-47s around then, and so it was Bell Aircraft at the time. And she spent her whole working life there, 35 years with them, and all through the C-5s, and she retired before they did, the newer things, the F-22s, F-35. And my mother started there when I was first grade at Lockheed, and she didn't work on aircraft, but my grandmother's claim to fame was she ran a copy machine for 30-something years, a Xerox machine. But my mother, I'm not quite sure what she did, but she worked at Lockheed also. So I mean, the entire town, it was, when I was a kid, the population was, 30, maybe 35,000, and the majority of the folks worked at Lockheed. And of course now the town is, Marietta's like 750,000. And they still have a base there, and Lockheed still builds aircraft. But there was that, and we lived 2 miles off the end of the runway, so there was constantly aircraft in a pattern right over the house. And so I was in elementary school, so this, I saw the first C-5 flight back in '68, and they had F-86 chase planes, and when they produce a new aircraft, it takes, a year, 2 years, whatever it takes. I mean, longer than that. That's after they've actually got the first one built and flying, and they do all these test flights. So, and then they had the Navy Reserve there flying P-2s. They had Marines were flying F-8s. They had T-33s. Gosh, the Air Guard had, I remember the F-100s when I was a kid, and then they got F-4s and so forth. So that was always there, and I had all the air shows too at Dobbins in the Navy side, mostly on the Navy side. And one of my mother's sisters, Peggy, was married to a Navy pilot. She was a stewardess for Eastern Airlines, and she met a Navy pilot. He was in A-4s with a attack squadron out of Oceana, but they wound up at Oceana, but they were actually at Cecil Field when she met him. But he died in an aircraft crash back in '61, and of course, being a Navy wife, she had, she was friends with a lot of the families, and so she wound up getting remarried, a fellow named Dick Allen, and Dick was an A-4 pilot, and then he went into A-6s and moved to Oceana. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. I forget what ship right now, but and then rose up through the ranks. He wound up being a CO of the A-85, A-6s out of Oceana. So I had that influence too. And he actually retired as Vice Admiral. He was Commander-in-Chief Atlantic Fleet, Airland, the Airland side, not the ship side, but Airland out of Norfolk. So long history there, and actually wound up getting stationed at Oceana, first tour after tech school, and so I was an airman, and he was a commander. I was in a different squadron, and he was up in the hangar with his folks, but that was that's my background as far as inspiration. Something I want to be part of, and I wound up being a part of it.